Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Horns Report here on KXAN Plus. I'm your host, Billy Gates, and here on the Horns Report, we, of course, talk about all things UT athletics. Before we get going, I have to mention this to you once again. First of all, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. If you're watching this on KXAN Plus, thank you. If you're catching us on YouTube, you should go download KXAN Plus on your smart TV through the Roku platform, also the Apple TV and Amazon Fire platforms. And we are on some Samsung TVs, so depending on what kind of model you have, you may or may not see us. If you have a newer model of Samsung TV, go ahead and look for us. If you have an older model, we'll get to you in due time. And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to KXAN News. All right, now all that stuff's out of the way. Time to get to the football. We are at the tail end of our position previews on KXAN.com and on KXAN Plus, of course. The latest position preview is the defensive backfield preview, which we'll be talking about today. And you can head over to KXAN.com, and this is on our front page, on our homepage and the sports page. And see, we're just getting down to it. I'm going to have the special teams preview done on Tuesday. We record this on a Monday. So I'll have that done. This is the defensive backfield preview. And to talk about it is KXAN Sports Director Roger Wallace. And Roger, we are getting so close to fall camp starting. Like I said, we record this on a Monday. Fall camp starts Wednesday, so just in a couple days. Talking about this defensive backfield, tremendous growth year over year from the 2023 season to the 2024 season. Just almost a night and day difference from where they were that previous season.
Yeah, and I think the sign of a great program is when you lose guys like Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba, high draft picks, and you still say this could be a strength of the team because of returning All-American at safety and Michael Taft, a guy like Malik Muhammad who's taken so many snaps, Jalen Gilbo. I think Jelani McDonald's going to have a breakout year as well. Here you see Michael Taft, preseason All-American candidate for a second year, and so yeah, this is going to be an area where they lost a lot. Big production from two guys, but I think that the back end can still hold its own. Remember, they lost Derek Williams to an injury. He was showing a lot of promise as well in that secondary.
Yeah, and Derek Williams was one of the guys that Steve Sarkisian was really impressed with in spring practice when we got the chance to talk with him a couple times. He had mentioned Derek Williams. He also mentioned Warren Roberson, which he's a sophomore coming back. He saw some time as a freshman last season, played in all 16 games, didn't record a lot of statistics or anything, but there's two guys that in spring practices back in April that Steve was impressed with. You mentioned Jelani McDonald, Jalen Gilbo. Those guys, I mean, Jelani's got a ton of experience. He'll come back from his junior season. Jalen Gilbo's a senior, so there's more experience there. I think Malik Muhammad is going to be that kind of guy that sort of, he's not going to fill a Jahdae Barron type role because there's only one of those. But I kind of feel like Malik Muhammad can be sort of that guy next to Taft to really lock down opposing receivers.
Yeah, he's played a lot of snaps too, and you can't put a price on all the experience he has. And you're right. I think also you mentioned Taft. He's a guy that people don't see, including us, his value because of what he provides leadership-wise on the field, recognizing things right before the snap. So that's important. But Gilbo is wildly athletic. Jelani McDonald is big and long, and of course he had a spectacular interception. But I think he's the guy that when you talk to other players about who should we look for, maybe that they were not as productive last year. They didn't play as many snaps, but when they played, they were. I think that's Jelani McDonald. So I think he's prime for a big year along with Gilbo. But so much of this is the synchronicity of the front four, and can they get the pressure, and the linebackers, and that helps the back end. And are the back end guys going to have to hold up for a longer time because they can't, if they don't get to the quarterback? So it all goes hand in hand. But they seem to be in pretty good shape on the back end.
Yeah. As far as this back end goes, you mentioned McDonald, 6'2", 200 pounds. That's a pretty big dude back there. I mean, and he's and he showed his athleticism, like you said. I mean, he's been great for him. So it's one of those things where, like, it shouldn't like feel like a breakout season for him. Maybe if he starts to get going, but at the same time, I mean, he only made 4 starts last year, so who knows? But there's a lot of promise back there, and we've talked with Steve throughout SEC media days and everything leading up to camp, and he's really excited about this defense as a whole. Having the most depth that he's had. I really feel like the defensive backfield carries this depth. There's a ton of guys that can play.
Yeah, and you added Dwayne Akina, and
Right.
we know that he was one of the architects for DBU back in the day with Mac Brown. He comes back. Doesn't look like he's lost a step when we were out there for spring practice, even though it's been a few years since he was on the 40 acres. And, his wisdom and his experience, too, you got to believe that he's helping these guys out. So, as we go through all these position groupings, you might say, well, this is the biggest hole left by the 2 high draft picks in Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba, but still, I think the cupboard is far from bare. And then there's young guys, and again, we've said this with every position group, Billy. You don't know who's going to emerge. You don't know who the moment won't be too big for.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then they're the next guy we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep, and that next guy who we could be talking about could be freshman Jonah Williams. Let's see what he does on the football field. We've seen what he could do on the baseball field. Early enrollee, should have been at his high school prom last spring. Instead, he's playing Division I baseball for the Texas Longhorns. Had a little injury issue, that had some hip issues going on. So we'll see what he can do once training camp hits. But man, what an exciting athlete that Texas was able to grab out of Galveston.
He doesn't lack any confidence, does he? Just based on the. I'll give you a funny story at the SEC baseball tournament. They had the top 4 seeds in the same hotel, and just by chance, Texas and Arkansas arrived at the exact same time. So it's a total logjam at the elevator, and Arkansas was getting on first. We know what Arkansas did to Texas and all that, and Texas players are waiting. Who's the one guy that jumps on the elevator with all the Arkansas players? Of course, it's Jonah Williams.
That is that. I mean, yeah. Like we saw it. I wouldn't call them antics on the baseball field, but there was a little bit of gamesmanship that he was showing. I can't remember who it was against, but he sort of like drew out like a walk against somebody and just sort of just sauntered down to first base and maybe was a little boastful, a little prideful, but that's just, I mean, to me, that's just a competitive streak in a guy, and I think that's something good to have in a defensive back like this, especially one as athletically gifted as Williams.
I don't know if there's a tougher guy on the team than Rylan Galvan, and he was kind of marveling at the guts Williams had to do that. And you're right. I mean, it's a different animal. He probably thinks baseball is so much more fun in some ways because there's no contact yet. You mentioned it. On the baseball field, he's a big dude, 6'2", over 200 pounds, great athlete, fearless out there. On the football field, still big, but he's facing bigger guys, faster guys as well. But, yeah, that's a good call that he could be a guy that steps up and produces early.
Yeah, no, I know he'll be a fan favorite, that's for sure, because he was during the baseball season whenever he got to play. They loved him. He always got a big cheer from the folks at the dish when he was playing. So last season, we'll kind of backtrack a little bit, tell you like really how good this defensive backfield was last season. They were tied for first in FBS in total interceptions with BYU with 22, 7th in passing yards allowed. They only allowed 174-ish yards per game. In today's football, like that's locking down the opposing passing game pretty well. They were one of 3 teams in FBS to allow fewer than 10 passing touchdowns last season. They allowed 9. Florida International, that football power down there. And Kentucky were also the only 2 teams to allow less than 10 passing touchdowns. And like we've said, no more Jahdae Barron, no more Andrew Makuba. But with the guys coming back, I mean, there's really not really a reason why they can't at least come close to replicating something like they did last year.
Yeah,
right?
and it's also the schedule's different. They're
Yeah.
going to much tougher road environments they're going to be in right off the bat at Ohio State, and they got a pretty good wide receiver.
Yeah, they do.
to start off the season. But you're right. But sometimes those passing numbers are deceiving.
Sure.
Could mean the team's getting run on, and so you don't have to throw the ball as much. I don't think that will be the case. I think Texas will be pretty stout up front against the run. So again, all signs that this should be a very good defense. Maybe not quite as good as last year, which was one of the best defenses in the country. But maybe the offense is a little more explosive and it balances itself out. And they're not going to mess around because when they go to camp on Wednesday, they're going to be thinking about Ohio State, which would be a month or 4 weeks and 3 days away.
Yep, absolutely. So just to recap here, the defensive backfield season preview live on KXAN.com. You can find it on the front page. You can find it on the local sports page, the Horns Report page. However you get to our website, you can find it. We also have links to all of the other position previews that we have done throughout the summer, kind of leading up to the beginning of fall camp, which is on Wednesday. We will talk to the coordinators. We'll talk to Pete Kwiatkowski, Kyle Flood, and Jeff Banks coming up on Tuesdays. So we'll have all that coverage for you on air and online. But if you want a quick refresher on all the position groups, head on over to KXAN.com, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, another DB we'd be remiss if we didn't mention is Kobe Black.
Yes,
a
Kobe
guy
Black,
that got some chances last year, but he's obviously going to be called on a lot more, especially depending on what they do with Gilbo. If they put him at that star or the nickel, then Black will be out there at a corner position. So that's another guy that certainly is a name to keep an eye on. He's a big, lanky guy as well in that secondary.
Yes. He I believe Sarkisian was pretty high on him tail end of last year too. Like he was coming on in practices,
detecting a pattern here with these guys.
Right?
They're pretty high on the talent they've got up and down the roster.
You would think the guys they recruit they'd be pretty high on, right? We're going to go into another preview, like I had mentioned earlier, the specialists, which we don't spend a ton of time on until they're performing poorly. It's one of those things where it's like, if you're a field goal kicker and you're doing your job, nobody talks about you. But if you're a kicker and you're not doing your job so well, then you're the talk of the town. And that's kind of what happened with Bert Auburn last year. Struggled mightily, especially near the end of the season, after having one of the best careers in school history kicking the football. It was kind of a tough pill for fans to swallow, seeing Bert, miss 9 field goals last year. He finished 16 for 25 after having just a phenomenal pair of seasons. Auburn went to the transfer portal. He's now playing for the Miami Hurricanes. His replacement didn't have to go far to find his replacement.
Yeah, Mason Shipley is a guy from Liberty Hill, Texas State, started Oklahoma State, and this is a guy that's got a lot of credentials. The punter that they got from Utah, Jack Baumeister, is also a field goal kicker as well, so there might be some competition. I think Will Stone would like to have a say in it, but yeah, Shipley's a guy that can kick it 60 yards, all Sun Belt performer in his career, so it would seem that the special teams are, pretty good. But that punter position is so important as well, flipping the field position. And Michael Kern came in as a highly touted freshman from Fort Lauderdale. He also was a little bit inconsistent. So, we talk about these position groupings and everything goes hand in hand. And it's a lot easier to play defense when offenses are starting inside their own 20-yard line. And a lot of that has to do with the special teams.
Yes. Yeah, and we'll stick with Shipley here. 31 of 35 for his career at Texas State. Like you said, Roger, kicked that 60-yarder, the program record for Texas State, and the Sun Belt record. Did that against Sam Houston last year. A 60-yard kick, that's legit. That's a bomb.
And the one thing about different levels, 60 yards is still 60 yards. It doesn't matter what level you're kicking it.
60 yards. Yes, and Will Stone is back to take over the kickoff duties. He filled in for Auburn in the CFP semifinals up at the Cotton Bowl against Ohio State, kicked a couple PATs. He is a field goal kicker. He's also an Austin guy from Regents School, a little private school that's got a pretty good football history here. So, maybe he jumps into the fray.
Oh, you could bet he's thinking he's got his chance to win the job. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And then they've got another kicker on the roster, Spencer Barnett. Let's not forget the Westlake kid who booted a 59-yard field goal in the first game of the 2023 season for the Westlake Shaps. And he's got a pedigree too. His older brother Charlie's a kicker at West Point, and I think if either one of these players gets a little dinged up and Spencer comes in and gets his chance, who knows? That could be another breakout kind of guy.
No doubt. I mean, they've got options on both sides of it, but it is so important that you're right. It's the third phase, but
right.
Coaches, ask Jeff Banks. He knows that phase is just as important at times as the offense and the defense as they get set to start camp this week.
Yeah. So going on to punter, we mentioned Jack Baumeister, the Australian, who for 2 seasons at Utah was a 2-time All-Conference punter, once in the Pac-12, once in the Big 12. That's still weird to say, but yeah, that's where Utah's at right now. Michael Kern, the touted freshman from St. Thomas Aquinas, that football factory there in Florida, he transferred to Cal. He was on the roster during the spring, but it appeared that Baumeister, excuse me, he appeared to win that job, and so that kind of sent Kern packing. But so that's a little bit of a I don't know. I think fans kind of liked Kern, especially after he overcame that ankle injury there in the middle of the season. He started to punt really well near the end of the year.
Yeah, business decisions, Billy.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously, if you bring in a veteran from a Power 5, you expect that veteran to play. So Kern probably saw the writing on the wall. And this is, the world we live in now with roster turnover.
Yep. If you don't get the chance to play right away, sometimes, unless you're a guy named Arch Manning, then you bail. But, it is what it is at this point. As far as the guys getting the ball to the punter, to the kicker, Lance St. Louis, the deep snapper, he's had 40 games of experience. Again, one of those positions where who talks about the deep snapper, right? Unless they're snapping it over somebody's head or whatever. But it was enough that Steve Sarkisian mentioned it in his opening remarks at the SEC Media Days, saying how he had seniors at deep snapper, holder, kicker, punter. He has experience all over the special teams unit. And we'll see who emerges as their return guys. They used Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden last year. Obviously, they're gone. So we're going to have to see who Jeff Banks and Steve Sarkisian want to use as their return guys. A receiver, maybe? That's usually who it is, but at this point, who really knows? DeAndre Moore, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, that's a job, and there's so many things to it. Punt returner, it's funny. You think about, you want a dynamic punt returner. What do coaches say? They'll say, we want a guy that catches a ball.
Right.
The first thing you do is you catch a ball. If you can get 8 to 10 yards, that's a pretty successful punt return. We saw Silas Bolden at the end of the year. He had the big one, obviously, in the Peach Bowl. But, first things first, get the ball, possess it, and go on. Ryan Wingo fits into those plans, and some other guys that, we haven't even mentioned. But, that's an area I think Sark would like to see a little more production, especially the kick return. So hard now because of the rules. A lot of times it's easier just to put the hand up and take it at the 25 and hand it to Arch Manning.
Yeah. So, a couple of preseason awards here that I've got to pull up on my screen here just so I make sure I'm doing this right. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, the Maxwell.
The Maxwell Award.
Came out on Monday.
It came out Monday, and Arch Manning. You might have heard of him.
We love the watch list, don't we?
We do love a watch list, Arch Manning, Trey Wisner, both named to the Maxwell watch list. The Maxwell Award has been given out since, 1936, 37 by the Maxwell Club. Honors the college football player of the year, sort of like opposite of the Heisman. There's some different criteria. Different clubs give it out, what have you. Voting's different. But anyway, the Maxwell Club recognized Arch Manning, his potential clearly, because there's not a ton of game experience there for him. But Trey Wisner, the only returning running back in the Southeastern Conference, excuse me, I started going back in time to the Southwest Conference. The only returning running back to have rushed for 1,000 yards or more the previous season. It's a nice feather in the cap, but in the end, like Arch had said in his comments at SEC Media Days, talk is cheap. You have to go out and prove it. So we'll see. I mean, it's just a cool little honor.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, minus a Bijan Robinson, you're probably not going to get the numbers in this offense individually, especially if C.J. Baxter stays healthy. Jared Gibson's a guy that they like down on the goal line, assuming he can make sure he doesn't have any problems with ball security. And then the fact that their offense is so diverse. So, yeah, it's cool for Wisner considering where he was before last season to where he is now. And Arch is strictly on, everybody bases on what he can and will do.
Sure.
But you're right, he's thrown 90 passes. So, and I talked about it in our breakdown of the quarterbacks. He didn't throw a pass on the road. So talk about a baptism as the starter, not only on the road, but at Ohio Stadium in front of over 100,000 on August 30th.
Right. And, as we sort of get closer to that, I mean, training camp's coming up starting Wednesday. We've said that a few times now. I mean, just kind of from your perspective, Roger, you've covered this team for a very long time. You've been around Sarkisian his entire tenure. You've been around all kinds of coaches. I mean, just kind of what kind of feeling do you get from this Texas team? Everything that's happened in the offseason. I mean, just kind of what are your general sort of feelings about this team heading into fall camp?
Well, I think the start of training camp now is so different because it's not the start of training camp per se. They're in shape. They're ready to go. They've been working in the summer. They know the playbook. They've played 7-on-7. They've run routes. So now it's a matter of getting ready for that opener and also kind of figuring out not only your 11 on both sides, but really your 22 and beyond on both sides. And Sark talked about it last week that because the premier non-conference game is the opener, that's a little different mindset. And it was funny. He was very transparent. Last year, Game 2 Michigan, 2 years ago, and 3 years ago, Game 2 Alabama. And they were working on those games in training camp, and then they kind of go in reverse towards the end of training camp and get ready for the opener. Last year, Colorado State. Well, it's a little different this year because that premier game is the first one. So he said it's more like a bowl month where the first 2 weeks, it's training camp, it's reps, it's, figuring things out, and then pretty much 2 weeks game prep for Ohio State as opposed to 2 weeks of training camp, maybe 3 or 4 days on that Game 2 premier non-conference game, and then you dial it back to the opener. So I think this is more like 2 weeks of training camp, 2 weeks of Ohio State. Now they're not going to shove everything down their throat right away because then that last week of camp it gets stale. So I'm sure they have some strategy. But it is interesting when that first game is the premier game, one of the premier non-conference games of the entire season in college football, and it happens to be at 11 a.m. on the first full Saturday of the season.
Yeah, that is the big noon kickoff game on Fox. That is the premier game, I think, of the first week of the season. That's going to be at Columbus, Ohio, in the Horseshoe. Going to be a big test to see where this Texas team is. It's going to be a big test for Ohio State, too. They've got to replace a lot of guys. They've got a new quarterback to break in. They got a lot of folks from that defense that beat Texas to replace. So we'll see what Ryan Day can do. But obviously, that's such a great program that you gotta expect that this game is gonna be a pretty big barn burner.
Well, and you think about how sometimes things just work out. It was 25 years ago. Texas went to Ohio State. Week 2 this time. They beat Ohio State, and they probably couldn't afford a loss that year back when it was just the BCS, too. Lima Swede makes the great catch in the end zone to get the lead. And then, oh, by the way, Justin Zwick fumbles it. Brian Robinson recovers the fumble to preserve the win. That was back when they rotated Zwick and Troy Smith, who ended up winning the Heisman next year, and he probably would have been the full starter, but he got suspended at the end of the previous season. I'm sure Jim Tressel probably stays up late at night thinking about maybe I should have, done what was best for the team and put discipline aside a little bit. Regardless, that game 25 years ago launched Texas' season. Obviously, they end up championship game, beat USC, who's the co-offensive coordinator at USC, Steve Sarkisian, and now 25 years later, they can afford a loss this year in the new format. Now, you probably can't afford a bad loss as much, but so a quarter of a century later, here we are again, Texas, Ohio State, with a lot of implications on the line.
Yeah, no, you can afford a quote-unquote good loss to a team like Ohio State. You can't afford a bad loss to somebody, let's say, San Jose State.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. I mean, they'll be a 2-loss team. I'm almost you can guarantee in the 12-team playoff. But to get that win and then come home for 3 before going on the road to open, because October is going to be brutal. They don't even sniff DKR except practice in the month of October. So there you see the schedule: San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam. Sam was that game where you had to add that 4th non-conference because they weren't sure what was going to happen with the SEC schedule. Would they add that 9th SEC game? Now, obviously, they couldn't do it the first 2 years of Texas OU because they just flip it. But now, again, they're in limbo, thinking about next year. Are they going to add that 9th SEC game? Are they going to keep it at 8? Then you got to get a 4th non-conference as well. And if they don't add it, Billy, that's when it becomes real interesting with this A&M series.
Right.
Because as it stands right now, each team has one opposite opponent they're locked into in an 8 game, and it's Oklahoma for Texas. So can you imagine if next year Texas is not playing Texas A&M because they got you got to play every team in the SEC over a certain span of time.
Yeah.
So
that would. Oh man, I don't know what would happen. Like there'd be just chaos in the streets.
I would think they'll figure out a way. It's funny because the SEC doesn't really want it because they think, first of all, our strength of schedule is just fine.
Sure.
Second of all, you're taking away a win from everybody because that 4th game is always pretty much a guaranteed win. And third, it's a home game.
Right.
So financially, they need the network to pony up enough money where they can justify, because they can say, we got 8 non-conference games. Do you want to play these 8 games in other conferences and throw that line out there? So I don't think it's a slam dunk, but it seems like it's trending towards going to that 9-game conference schedule.
And then we'll see what they want to do. An interesting note about that Sam Houston game: it was originally a week later, right? Like it was originally a week later, but then it was moved up a week so they could have a bye before the SEC opener against Florida. So that was an interesting sort of wrinkle in the schedule.
Yeah, that was going to be the bye week, and then you still have another non-conference. So I think that helps in the scheduling as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see how November to remember. This might be an October to remember for the Longhorns.
Yeah, because they literally do not play in DKR the entire month of October. Like it is.
And if it's confusing to some, it's because the OU game is technically a home game.
Right, yeah.
They rotate that home and away, so this is a home game for Texas. So
technically, it's a home game. Yeah.
They'll be in the burnt orange at the Cotton Bowl the second Saturday in October.
They're Gainesville, the Cotton Bowl, then Lexington, Kentucky, and then Starkville, Mississippi in October before they come back home to face Vanderbilt on November 1st. So anyway, we're going to end this Horns Report right there. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. For Roger Wallace, I'm Billy Gates, and we'll talk to you again very soon.